Dear Hungarian friends, I am very happy that my book, Fourth Political Theory, is published in Hungarian language. I think that it is time to revise, to think about the present state of things in the ideology and in politics. There is the huge crisis of European Union. There is the huge crisis of modern capitalist system. It is a huge crisis of the modernity and as well the postmodernity itself, trying to destroy all the traditional identities is in itself a crisis. So I think that fourth political theory, it is invitation to think about the roots and ideological reasons and the sources of this crisis, first of all. So the crisis of capitalism and the crisis of liberalism, the only victorious political ideology of the modernity with its roots in enlightenment, now all that is that belongs to the past. So liberalism and postmodernity, it's the sign of the crisis, because the destruction of the traditional identity, that is the program of modern days liberalism, is the crisis of itself, because destroying or transgressing the identity, traditional identities, we are coming to the moment when we are invited to transgress human identity. And that it is not only fantastic, that is not only apocalyptic prevision, it is the kind of state of things with artificial intelligence, with gender politics, where the humanity, the society, is invited to stop to be human, to stop to be men and women, and to transform in something post-human. They try to grant us immortality, but we need to pay with our human nature. So maybe there is possible immortality, but not for human. But some post-human species. And that is the real challenge of the modernity. And modernity is responsible for all that development, and in the political and ideological sense, the responsibility falls on liberalism, the only political ideology of modernity that is present, that has won over its enemies in the form of communism and fascism and nationalism. And now this victorious liberalism shows its totalitarian and nihilistic and completely destructive nature. So now we see liberalism as the only one and only ideology of the modernity, that is not anymore only ideology in the pure sense, so the state of mind, that is as well the state of things. So that is objectivated, reificated ideology, what represents modern days liberalism. And it is precisely the concentration of all the evil that has brought us to the point where once more in our history we are deciding to be or not to be. To be now, the formulation of this to be or not to be question is as following: to be or not to be human, to transform into a post-humanity or not to transform that. If you agree with liberal agenda, with globalization, with postmodernity, with technological development, with posthumanism, so please be kind and to enter in the brave new world of post-human future with this singularity, artificial intelligence, chimeras and cybers. But if you try to defend, to conserve, to stay true to the human nature, you are invited to take an opposite position to this. So, fourth political theory, it is book for those who don't agree with the state of things. And more or less, that is the book for all that who experience, who feel that liberalism is turned in something totalitarian, in something completely destructive, and the system of repression, and all those who understand the danger, the existential threat of the liberalism and its agenda fulfilling on the world scale in the process of globalization, that is the book for those who don't agree with that. But at the same time, the main idea of my book is that traditional, old opposite version to liberalism, the critical theories that criticize liberalism are not enough. They are exhausted. They failed to represent the real alternative to liberalism. And so in order to fight against liberalism, we could not use anymore neither communism nor fascism. So all the second political theory, I'm calling communism second political theory, and third political theory, that is nationalism, fascism or Nazism, they belong to the past. They failed to win the liberalism, and because they were too modern, they were not sufficiently alternative. They were a kind of variation of the same spirit of modernity with the same Cartesian vision of subject and object, and that was the principal reason of these alternative ideologies to fail. So they belong to the past because they were not sufficiently anti-liberal, but they have lost as well because they were too liberal, too modern. They tried to oppose modernity, as well the other modernity, and they conserved in themselves the seeds, bad seeds of the same materialistic, technological, progressist, linear, scientific, so-called scientific world vision that is based on the racism, of the ethnocentrism of the West in its worse aspect. So they were not traditional, and they were not sufficiently human, so they have lost the battle against liberalism because they were too modern, and because the liberal was nevertheless more modern than them. So that was the fight. All the ideological fight of the 20th century was developed around this heritage of modernity. Who will be heir of the modernity? Or either liberals or communists or fascists. That was the ideological battle, and the liberals have won it. So they are legitimate heir of modernity, and so they are responsible for it. If we don't agree with liberalism, if we don't agree with post-humanist horizon of our humanity, if we are not ready to transgress, to lose our human roots and human dignity, so we are invited to fight against liberalism, but not falling into the trap of the old alternatives. So that is very important. In order to attack efficiently liberalism, we need to attack it not from the past, but we need to attack it into the future, in the zone, in the space of the future, not falling in the previous alternatives, but creating, imagining, creating, constructing maybe new alternative to liberalism. Not communist, neither communist, nor fascist, nor nationalist, nor Nazist, and so on. So that is, fourth political theory is invitation to think differently, to oppose the mainstream liberal agenda that destroys under our eyes all our culture, all our spirituality, or the family, the society, the system of values, and if we don't agree with this agenda, we need to react. And so it is invitation. It's not dogmatic. It is not one theory more. Fourth political theory. It's a kind of invitation to make a kind of summary of the ideological battle of last centuries in order to find the new way into the future, into the alternative future. So that is more or less the essence of the message in the fourth political theory, and invitation precisely consists in the rethink the concept of subject in modern political philosophy, and because all three political ideologies, liberalism, communism, and fascism, they are based on some modifications of the same subject. So, but of Cartesian subject, in liberalism that is individual, and communism it is the class, and the fascism or third political theory it is the nation or state. All these subjects belong to the modern concept of subject and object, and their final result of their application is a reification of the human, or transforming the subject into the object, and finally this mechanical artificial intelligence. That's the last phase of this liberation, and the finalization of the application of liberal agenda to the human history. And it's the end of history, and replacement, not replacement, only replacement by the immigrants and refugee, by the native European population is only first phase of it. But the second replacement will be the replacement of the human beings by the cyborgs, and human intellect by artificial intellect. That is the post-humanist phase that is approaching, and after the moment where liberalism has overcome traditional family, traditional relations between the sexes, so after pretending that any kind of collective identity, including sexual identity, is something optional, so you could choose to be man or woman. So after that, the only collective identity that rests yet it is human identity. And post-humanization and dehumanization is the logical last and next step of the liberal politics. If we want to avoid that, we need to revise all the history of liberalism and all the history of the modernity. And here we have the help of the traditionalism, or European traditionalism, Eastern traditionalism, that fought against the modernity as such during already almost 100 years after the manifestation of the first sign of first text of René Guénon and Julius Evola, who were the traditionalists that saw from the beginning of the previous century, 20th century, the danger of the modernity, and they have recognized the real metaphysical threat of the modernity, and they have opposed to that the traditionalism. So traditionalism is one of the main sources of my critical forced political theory, but as well, I think we need to join to this criticism as well some aspect of postmodern thought, because postmodern thought is very different. It's not homogeneous, and we could find very interesting and very correct criticism against modernity in post-modern way of thought. So we should imagine something like postmodernity seen from the right. So that is a kind of synthesis between traditionalist criticism of the modernity and postmodern criticism of the modernity. If we join that, we could expect, we could hope to receive a new version of alternative to the liberalism. So my idea is that, and that the most important thing is to go out, to transcend this modern subject. So in order to transcend that, I am proposing in my book 2 ways. First of all, it is to replace the Cartesian subject by Heideggerian concept of Dasein. Dasein, that is existential presence or some consciousness, the point of consciousness in existential way. So it is philosophical invitation to think as a new subject, Dasein. And as well, in the political and social sense, it is the people, the concept of the people that is fallen into the oblivion from the beginning of the modernity. That was a very important concept in the Renaissance, in the early modernity, but in the developed modernity it was forgotten. But that is very important people, and the growing wave of the populism, modern days populism, that represents precisely this insatisfaction, that disillusion of the masses, of the political liberal elites that try to impose their will, globalist elites. And we have seen in the case of Trump the amount of this populist energies. It is amazing. It's very important. So growing wave of populism, it brings in itself very important promises of new subject, new political subject, that is the people as organical community, not as nation, something constructed, not as a society as well, something based on the agglomeration of the individuals. People as organical integrity, and people in its integrity, the people as something holistic. That is the other aspect of possible subject for fourth political theory. And if we join Dasein and the people, we receive the concept of the existential understanding of people as entity existing, that exists, that is described by existentials in the Heideggerian sense. So that is a kind of a link between philosophical understanding, how to overcome modern subject, and as well political aspect of the same problem, and this growth of the populists from the left and from the right. But populism is neither left nor right. It's something organic. It is the final riot, final rebellion of the organic society against artificial society. So that is a kind of human, the riot of the human being against its imposition of the machine on us. So that is the last revolution, the last revolt of the humanity against liberal domination and its alienating and totalitarian oppressive rule. So that is more or less the essence of this book. why it's so important to publish in the Hungarian language. I like very much Hungarian culture. I appreciate Hungarian people and Hungarian history. But I think that there is some geopolitical reasons that are very important, because Hungary today is in search of the alternative. It searches the way out of the Europe that isn't anymore European. Paradoxically, the peoples of the Eastern Europe now they manifest themselves as much more European than the people of Western Europe. So you Hungarians, you try to fight for your identity, to preserve your culture, to preserve your specific features of your tradition, and you understand the threat and danger of progress of the liberal values that are imposed by European Union. So you have saved yourself from Soviet imposed totalitarianism, but in order to fall in other totalitarianism, liberal one. So I think that is, and the Hungarian people shows more will to resist against that than other people in Western Europe. And comparing with Western Europe, you Hungarians, you behave yourself much more in European way. So you are much more European than Western Europeans. You are responsible, you feel the responsibility, not only for conservation of your identity, but as well, you are concerned by this loss of the identity of European culture, European civilization, and European society. So I think that you manifest much more the sense of the responsibility than Western societies totally controlled by liberal postmodern, in the better sense, elite that try to impose the transgressive agenda against all rests of sacred tradition of people's popular culture and traditional European values. So you react, and that is the sign that you are alive, that you are a living being, you are still human, and you can suffer, you can react, you can decide, you can have the will to accept something or reject something. So you are free from liberal agenda when they let us to be free on the liberals. They let us to be free to be liberals, but they don't let us the freedom to be not liberal. So we are obliged in some way to be liberal, and that is prohibited to be not liberals. So but that is the kind of limitation of our freedom, and Hungarian people shows many signs of this cultural and spiritual revival, the possibility of this resistance against hegemony of the liberalism and of the globalist elite called by President of the United States the swamp. You are fighting against your Hungarian swamp, represented by Hungarian Soros, for example, and you show to all others the example how to win in this fight. So we Russians, we appreciate it very, very much in the position of all Hungarian society, in the position of your president. I don't know in details the balance, political, ideological balance in Hungary, but we Russians in general, we appreciate the position of Mr. Orban and the defense of the Hungarian identity, and we presume that the origin or one of the sources of that it is well the other traditionalist movement that are growing in Hungary, and that is very important to have such situation. I think as well that now it is time to Eastern Europe to think itself independently from the Western Europe, because you are inside of European Union, you have no illusion, you have used all the positive aspects, and now you understand the real state of things in the Western Union. So I presume you have enough of positive and negative side. You can freely and without any domination to make your balance, and we see the sign that this balance in your eyes, not in our eyes, in your eyes, in Hungarian eyes, is rather negative. So you try to find a way out of that, and I think that the same we see in Czechia, in Slovakia as well, and in Poland as well. The Russia-phobic aspect of this cultural revival is different. Poles, they hate us more than others. But the problem is not us, Russians. The problem is you. The problem is your tradition, your identity. You could not love us, but if you try to defend your identity, your culture from this hegemony of the liberalism and globalization, we are in the same camp. We are on one side of barricades, not on other. It's very important. So it is pragmatically. We are in danger, all of us, all the people that tries to conserve their traditional identity are in the same camp, and we are under attack. Including under attack is American people. That is not anymore, I would say, our principal enemy. Globalist elite, American swamp is our enemy, but it is as well, as we have seen, the enemy of the American people. So we are all united now. That is new kind of separation line, not between the East and no more between the East and West, but between the political globalist, post-humanist elite and the peoples. So that is new definition of the roles in the final planetarian battle, a fight the peoples against the liberal globalist elite, against the swamp. And here we are all in the same camp. Not only Russians, Hungarians, Poles, Romanians, Czechs, Slavs or not, Austrian as well, because there are many positive signs in Austrian political field, that there is a kind of resistance in this German state that is comparing to the Germany. It is Austria is much more alive. It is much more free. It tries to defend by any means its identity, traditional identity, and I think that this we could already foresee a kind of alliance, so Eastern European alliance that could be not the continuation of Atlantist and globalist and liberal strategy directed against us, but new, greater Eastern Europe appearing, emerging under our eyes, and I think that Hungary plays here with the Poland and with the Austria and with many other Eastern European countries. We see here the new chance for multipolarity, for the real, not liberal and very paradoxal and very special freedom, but real freedom, And forced political theory, it is a kind of instrument, an ideological tool that help us to fight liberalism without falling into the trap of communism or nationalism or fascism. We need to overcome all modernity, because the modernity is absolutely wrong, and the problem is inside of these inorganic, artificial, and very dangerous turn in the human history. We need to transcend the modernity, overcome it. We need to understand this existential threat of the modernity and overcome it together. So I think that Hungary should play the essential role in the revival of the Eastern Europe. I see modern Hungary as the pole of the European resistance, and I think it cannot be possible without the revival of the spirit of great Hungarian people. So I'm really happy that my book is translated into Hungarian, and best wishes, best reading. I would like to come to Hungary once to speak with you, to discuss with you, to continue developing this theory, because forced political theory is not Russian theory, neither Russian nor universal. Any people should give to this forced political theory its own content. So I hope to have once to see once a Hungarian version of forced political theory based on your values, your traditions. But nevertheless, studying your history and our history, I have come to the conclusion that your Turanian roots and our Turanian roots are more or less very close. Being different, we have many things in common. And I think that now we are in a moment when our dignity, our values, our identity is tested by the critical time. So I hope we will win, and we should do that together. Best wishes, and I wish you national Hungarian revival.